Welcome everybody to Invent FM, episode number 2 with Danielle Applestone. Thank you, Danielle, so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So I'm super excited to ask you lots of different questions, and we're going to spend a lot of time later talking about your role as the CEO of Daughters of Rosie. But first, there's a story that you told to me and some of the other now it's called Activate fellows, Cyclotron Road fellows, a long time ago, that I have always remembered, and I thought would be a really fun way both for people to get to know you and to be inspired to, let's say, take bold action even in dire global economic circumstances. So Danielle, I want to, I'm maybe giving away too much of it. I should just let you tell the story, but I'd love to hear the story of the beginning of Other Mill.
Mm, yeah. Um, it's funny how much the origin story matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll set the stage a tiny bit, which is that I had just I was a single mom, had a kid who was like 5, almost 6, and I had finally made it through grad school and got my PhD in material science, come out to the Bay Area, did some interviewing, and then took a somewhat like more like, let's say, stretch goal type of job, which was running this government project, which was supposed to be 3 years, $8 million to build desktop sized manufacturing equipment for the classroom. And it was funded by DARPA. And the whole reason they wanted to do it was because the Department of Defense had done a study and they said, oh, wow, actually, the biggest threat to national security in the next 2 decades is just not having enough people to operate the infrastructure, like military, manufacturing infrastructure. Lo and behold, in COVID times, we see how much that actually matters. So,
Oh yeah.
props to the DoD. They were really on the ball. So
Mm-hmm.
they funded this thing. They're like, we needed to cost less to teach people how to like use real manufacturing equipment. So let's make smaller ones that are easier to use. And so I ran that project and it was amazing. So we had gotten to the point, I started running that project and we had gotten to the point where we had prototypes of a couple different pieces of equipment. We had basic software that was running. You can still see on YouTube like some of the original test software.
Awesome.
Um, and then it was 2013 and government sequestration happened, which meant across the board budget cuts to every in every vertical. So DoD, Department of Energy, like all those people had to do mandatory budget cuts. And essentially we're like, wait, what is DARPA doing with education? No, this is out. So they just cut the
Sequestered.
project. Yes, sequestered. We have captured this, unlike all the carbon we should be capturing. So they captured our cash, never to be seen again. And I was really in love with the project at that time. And the reason why is because, like, as a kid growing up in rural Arkansas, like, access to tools was everything for me. Like, access to tools is why I became an engineer, and I thought, this is what I wanna do. I wanna increase access, and these tools are amazing, and at that time, like, Kickstarter was really hot.
Mhm.
So I was like, "Let's just run a Kickstarter campaign," which in hindsight, I essentially say there's only like a very few reasons to do a Kickstarter, none of which we
You
had.
qualified for.
We were completely unqualified for all of those reasons, which a logical person would need to know, but
So sorry, just
did it
to interrupt
anyways.
briefly, would you elaborate on what the 3 reasons to do a Kickstarter are?
Yeah, well, I mean, the main one is that don't do hardware if you can help it. Like we were like our product in the end ended up being around like 3 grand.
Mhm.
So, like, don't launch a $3,000 product on Kickstarter for half the cost. And also with hardware, like, you don't really wanna tell people what the price of it is until you know how expensive it is to make. And we had only ever made, I think at that point, maybe 12, maybe
Yeah.
it was even 4.
Right.
Quantity 4,
Right.
and they were all prototypes. We didn't have any manufacturing infrastructure set up whatsoever. We had no idea about,
It was
like,
in a piano factory, right?
yeah, pipe organ
Or a
factory.
pipe organ factory.
Yeah, so we were in this pipe organ factory and we had just like built some scrappy prototypes that were actually quite compelling, but like that's not the same as a product.
Yeah.
So like launching on Kickstarter, you need to have like made the thing multiple times, figure out your whole manufacturing setup, how you're going to do it, what's your quantity, what are your costs, and then you can actually say like, is this a good fit for Kickstarter? Well, it's this price, you know. So essentially we did it anyway, and it turned out to be, like, quite, an important feature because we we sold, like, 205 machines, which was, like,
Pretty good.
I think it was, like, $360,000, all of which was spent before we even built the first one. So that's really scary.
On rent in San Francisco or
On everything. I mean, like parts, salaries for people, everything. We were just getting the engine going. But what it did was it gave us the validation for the market. It was like we did this super risky thing because I had started fundraising. Like money went away in January, nail in the coffin in February. We're definitely not getting it back. So we're like, okay. Between February and May, when we launched the Kickstarter, I had been trying to fundraise. Like I was like, I've been out of the science world, out of the lab for maybe like 8 months at this point, and I don't even know the difference between sales and marketing
Mhm.
at all. And I'm just like, well, I'll just try to get money. Let's see who knows who. And I took meetings with anybody who would talk to me and just started like learning how to sell and fundraise. So yeah, so I raised money miraculously. It took me, I think the Kickstarter closed maybe at the end of June or something like that, and then by mid-October I had raised 1.2 million. One thing that helped a lot is that MakerBot had a big sale in around that time too, and
Oh,
there
so
was like a
that's when
lot
Stratus
of
bought MakerBot and so
yeah, so people were like, "Oh, your products are actually very similar to 3D printing, but like really expand the world of possibilities when it comes to prototyping." And so timing could not have been more perfect for what we were doing.
got it.
Yeah. So it was, I will also say it was like one of the most stressful times in my life. And that is including like getting a PhD in material science with a 4-year-old on my own and like basically and running a software business at the same time. And
Wow.
this like stressful, like, we've got this product, I really want to make it happen. I'm gonna run this Kickstarter campaign. Now we've got all these Kickstarter backers hassling us every day. And I'm gonna learn how to fundraise, and I'm gonna fundraise for, robotics. Let's just go ahead and fundraise for robotics, which is like super hard. And I was like a lady. And so there's like an extra layer of difficulty to it, but yeah, that was intense. And then I went on to raise, I think we raised like maybe $7 million total, mostly venture capital, before the company got acquired. So it was like, the first of many fundraisers and stuff for me. But it happened, and the company exists still and is still like building great products. And um yeah, so I liked how you described it as, like, the traumatic birth of of the thing. It's true, it probably still has some of that trauma built into it. Who knows?
There's only one way into this world.
That's true. I've learned a lot, um, from that experience, for sure, about effort and, like, w what things basically, I don't try to will anything to happen anymore. Like, that company, I willed into existence. I was like, "This must happen." And that's and then, and then you end up with a company that you have to, this must happen every step of the way. And so I decided, and also my husband made me agree to, that I was never gonna do that again,
Okay.
with subsequent companies. So I've been running my current company in a very different way.
So help me understand that, because I think this is something I could learn a lot from, and I struggle with myself. Like, I think, I don't know, to what extent have uh, do I repeatedly sort of will into existence polyspectra at at any cost? But I guess aside, I mean, the one thing you talked about with the Kickstarter, that, or maybe one way I'm interpreting your comment is sort of the, like, the demand signal, right? So the advantage of the Kickstarter was, okay, 205 people want it and bought it.
Mhm.
But I guess, what can you elaborate a little bit more on, what does it mean to go with the flow, more than willing this into existence?
Well, first of all, I got a coach because I realized that, like, my behavior was basically pathological. Like, I was just built to struggle. Like,
Okay,
and it didn't feel like I was moving forward unless I was struggling.
got it.
That's not true, actually. I think, like, I have unraveled that part of myself, and now it's more like, hmm, one of the phrases that really comes to mind about it is, like, if you create a company that you have to manage, then you'll just have to manage the company the entire time. Whereas if you create a company that you enjoy, you're gonna have a company where you enjoy it. And
Mhm.
so I'm like, "Oh, so if I don't struggle with every single thing I do at this company, then, like, I'll end up with a company where I don't have to struggle." And, I think part of that is, like, getting good at grieving things that don't work out, because I, at that point in time, didn't have any experience with that, and so I worked very hard to make sure nothing failed because I didn't know how to grieve when something did fail.
I love that.
And yeah, and so if you, instead of just like, keep going, power through, go, 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 like, powerful people can make anything happen. But then at the end of the day, you're like, did I really want that to happen? Like, or maybe I could have just let it go and felt sad about it and, like, really allowed myself to step into whatever's next from a position of, like, I'm not gonna push or pull the world. I'm just gonna be here and
Mhm.
just, I'm gonna do the things that bring me joy, bring me life, fuel me. That goes for relationships too, but for companies also. And
Yeah,
even, I did pretty good at the beginning of Daughters of Rosie with that. Still, I was sort of like, I built a business on re you know, that would succeed only if people changed, and that's, like, very hard. You're like, "Oh, I make money when you change your fundamental beliefs about women
yeah,
or people of color." Good luck making money like that, because people don't wanna change their beliefs, or they reluctantly do it, and so I'm like, "Oh,
mhm,
wow, I actually built this business pointed towards struggle also. Like, how do I reel that back? How do I stop struggling, um, with every business model that I create?" So, I will say, like, I don't have an answer. It's just, like, an ongoing process.
wow. No, that's really powerful. And I guess the one piece I want to double click it on for my own um selfish reasons is, I think we were chatting about this just a little bit before we went live, and I think you and I both um kind of share this. We're technical founders. There's a lot of things that we can do, and I often find myself in the trap of, like, well, I know how to make the website. Does it mean that I have to make the website? Like, yes, I have been on customer calls and been very successful with that. Is that what I'm going to do? And everything I know how to do chemistry. Should I be
Mm.
stirring the reactions, right? And so I'm curious just to hear a little bit more on, your realizations around, um, just for yourself, like how do you create that discernment of, hey, this is my work, this is someone else's work, or
Mhm.
this is my piece, this is, I'm going to delegate, or yeah, how do you think about that?
That part's actually really easy.
Okay,
So it's
teach me.
when I think about doing X, do I feel light or do I feel heavy?
Ooh, okay.
And so when I'm like, oh, do I think okay, like with a current project, I'm like, when I think about coordinating all of the meetings, do I feel light or no, I feel heavy. I feel very heavy when I think about that. Like when I think about like there's like basically you just apply that to everything and you just do the things that make you feel light.
Okay.
And it's not like a and sometimes something will make you feel light and then you stop feeling light about it and you're like what's going on here? And so sometimes there'll be like some emotions that I just need to let go. Like if I'm doing something and like, someone I really hate getting told no. Like being
Mhm.
told no just like really bothers me. And so sometimes like I know this about myself and I'm like, I'll be doing my work and it's amazing. And then I like like someone tells me no and I just get like very angry and stuck and heavy about it. And then I'm like, oh, okay, what are the feelings behind this stuckness? Okay, I'll just like feel those feelings, give them some space, a voice, maybe complain to my husband or co-founder or whatever, friends. Um, and then I'll be like, "Oh, wow. Actually, I feel light again." Like, so it's the heavy or light can be like, you really shouldn't be doing that because that's not
Mhm.
bringing you joy or making your life better. Or it could be there's like some sort of feelings around it that are, you know, that need to move. And usually you can tell the difference,
Yeah.
um, with
Well, and to me,
practice.
it's super connected to your comment earlier around grieving, right? Like
Uh-huh.
if you can't, accept no for an answer, like where does that go, right?
Yeah.
The body keeps the score. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you read that book too. Yeah, I love that book.
Bessel van der Kolk.
Yeah, that's a great book. So oh my gosh, I forgot that we had that in common. Um, I think also there was something I was thinking of around this. Oh, which is, just that I used to move at a pace that was artificially fast, and I no longer believe that's the pace I need to move at.
Mm-hmm.
But because I had been in survival mode for so long, I had forgotten what it was like. I forgot what my true pace was. And I was sort of
Yeah,
moving at the pace of the world, like moving at the pace that I thought was required for me to be successful. And that in and of itself was a struggle. Like I was always cracking the whip on myself. And so an important piece to being able to like feel these feelings, do I feel light? Do I feel heavy? Okay, this thing that I usually love, I just like hate right now. Why is that? Okay, actually, I need to slow down and just like spend some time tuning into myself. So, that was sort of step one, was just like
yeah,
slow down. Like I want to bring my body with me on this journey, not just like my mind, just like shooting light years ahead of everything else.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I can really resonate with that, and I think it's something that um, one of the challenges of having raised venture capital is that it's very easy to get yourself in a situation where, let's say, for lack of a better word, time is not your friend,
Yeah. Mhm.
in terms of the runway of the business, and if then the existential connection of, like, this cannot fail, because then I'm a failure, because this is the thing I willed into the world. It's really easy to get into that mode of just, I have to do more. What, every minute, what's the thing that I'm doing that's, $1,000 an hour, $10,000 an hour, what, like that kind of mentality, and always pushing the ball up the hill. So I can really resonate with that. I guess, are there any sort of like, I love this light versus heavy. It's almost like a like somatic check-in. but I'm curious, like, are there other tactics that you have for so let's say, like, right now, one of the things I'm struggling with, that I've shared with friends and like leadership team, is like I have that similar, like, this is not going fast enough, and then I'm trying to discern, like, okay, for some of the things about that I feel that way about, uh that's true, and I need to push, right? And for other things, I just you just chill out and be patient and let it happen. I'm curious, do you have any words of wisdom for an anxious deep tech founder?
Yeah. Well, one thing that was like pretty revolutionary for me is to look at my like to-do list and step back and say, what's the one thing that I could do to cut this list in half? Like,
Okay.
what am I not seeing? Like, always doing the like step back and think about, like, question your own assumptions.
Yeah.
And the more the like more at peace you are with being wrong, the easier this is. You're like, okay, wait a minute. I'm feeling swamped. I don't want to feel swamped. Feeling swamped, I know that I can't do my most creative, best work. So I'm looking at my list and I'm like, what's really essential here? And then what things where I'm like, oh, actually, if I just do this one other thing, like these four things go away. And so always always just trying to get out of work.
Mhm.
It's like one of the ways that I feel like, oh, okay, I can step into the more like calm way of existing. And then the other thing is I have I don't know what everybody's, personal stuff is, but for me, I have this like trope in my behavior, which is like, am I dragging a piano or not? Because like I have found that at different points in time, like it was that struggle, that like dragging of like a giant object, trying to move a giant object that made me feel strong. It made
Mhm.
me feel powerful. And so sometimes when there's nothing to drag around, I feel lost.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I'm adding any value. And so I guess I would encourage you with those things where you're like, I need to push, I need to push, I need to push. Be like, am I just pushing because if I stop pushing, I feel like I don't exist? Like, if I stop pushing, do I feel
Wow.
like what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Am I needed? Am I loved?
Yeah.
If I'm not dragging this piano? Um, and so I have seen just like how much my own shit gets in the way of like being an actual leader, which is like supporting the people around me. So I guess that's another trick is to like think about like,
Yeah.
why am I pushing this? Is it is it critical? Like,
Mhm.
because sometimes it is. Sometimes you have to like run really fast so the train doesn't run over you. Like there are those times, but they're actually, like, in my experience, there's fewer of them than you probably think.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some Mark Twain, like, people have suffered a great many tragedies and many more in their minds than in reality, or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can really resonate with that. And one of the things I've been doing recently, I've been really getting into to Cal Newport and this idea of deep work. And a big part of it is um, the recognizing the switching cost, the attentional switching cost of
Mm.
hopping around to all these things. And so it's been a little bit I mean, in some ways easier with COVID to kind of recognize like, oh, whoa, all these things that made me feel productive during the day, of these like busyness stuff, and like, oh, people stopping by and asking this and that, like
Mm-hmm.
that, when that's gone, and I really do and I really am intentional about setting aside this block of time that like I'm going to work on this thing. I totally resonate with that. It's very easy for me to go into this like, oh God, like where am I going? What is happening? Like, what about that person who didn't respond to my email last week? Should I jump in and really, really bug them? And
Mm.
I guess for me, it's just been trying to have the like self-awareness and self-compassion to be like, oh, okay, well, like being lost is part of the process. and
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
uh and yeah, if my job is to figure out what way to go, right, then how could I do that if I'm uh I don't know, without surveying the landscape and having the sense of uncertainty, or yeah, honestly, I think I don't know, just allowing yourself, I mean, boredom is related to this, right? Just recognizing how, how many times do you check this thing, and when I see my phone back there, is there something on there that I'm need, to your point, am I needed, am I loved? I think it's easy to psych yourself into thinking that you're being productive when you're really just busy.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that.
Yeah. There's been two things that have helped me out with this, and this does relate to invention, which is apparently the point of this podcast.
This is all about, to me, this is like, couldn't be more about invention.
Exactly. It super is. Um, and one of those things is like remembering or asking myself the question, like when I am picking up my phone compulsively or whatever it is, like, what is the feeling that I'm avoiding
Hmm.
by doing this?
Yeah,
Is it the feeling of not knowing what the heck I'm supposed to do?
right.
Maybe spending time deeply feeling that thing that terrifies me is worth the time, you know? I do trust that, like, my body has wisdom and, um, the other thing that I also trust is that this is g I mean, let's just go all the way there, which is I don't believe anymore that I know know in my mind what's gonna happen.
Hmm.
Like, I believe now that I'm more guided by some sort of internal intuition that is, like, pointing somewhere and has always been pointing somewhere. And my mind can tell me like, "Oh, I decided that. I decided that. Like, I I made that decision. I this. I'm the master of this. I'm the director of this movie.
I invented
Um,
this.
I invented this."
Did you?
It's it's actually it's it's doesn't it doesn't resonate with me anymore, that concept. And like that's a real hard one because your mind will tell you like, I'm in charge, I am smart, I think, like I do all this stuff, I'm running the show. But now I kind of believe like this life is going to reveal itself to me. And the more I can sit back and just allow it, the better I feel. The
Hmm.
more satisfying every day is. And I'm more experiencing my life than trying to direct it in some way. And that, I don't I I don't think that that's a popular view or like a mainstream view. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm not very religious or anything, but like, so I don't know. Maybe it's a thing that most people believe, and I'm just now waking up to it. Who knows? But yeah. So the whole notion of like what I'm supposed to do and what's on my to do list and all of that has like the pull of that. has gotten weaker and weaker and weaker.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, I think it is. I think, to be completely honest, part of what my intention in trying to figure out with this Invent FM and this whole show is really around is this exact question of kind of what is invention? Can I even invent something? Am I actually, I would like to, I'm on lots of patents, that makes me an inventor, but
mhm.
did I, did I really invent that? Did I discover that? To what extent, is my sort of ego about that just getting in my own way? um, but yeah, I love that, and I feel like, at least for me, like most of the really whether I think about it as like my inventions, right, that I see as valuable, or that like that experience of like, whoa, there is this kind of new thing that I just figured out in the universe that is like kind of uniquely uh for me in some way, or like, but I think if I really think hard about most of those things, to your point, I would be hard pressed to uh unambiguously state that they were planned, or that I came up with it, or that I ran this. There's an ineffability to it, right?
Yeah. It's so funny also there's the like trope about, most of the most significant inventions were happened by accident. And
Hmm.
like I also don't believe that. Like I also believe that it feels like an accident because maybe your conscious mind wasn't engaged in it, but
Right.
something made you mix those random things together. Like
Totally.
you did. You did
Right.
it. Like you were driven by
Yeah.
you were compelled in some way even to make that invention based upon accident. Um and so and I would say actually more and more of my life now feels like just accidents, like just, coincidences or whatever. Um and really like also, I don't consider myself an inventor at all, even though, yeah, sure, I'm on patents too, but
What?
it's like
Oh no,
I'm
I didn't get the memo.
I feel like I'm more a synthesizer. Like I'm
Ugh,
very good at synthesizing
I like that.
synthesizing new ideas and being like I'm like cross-pollinated by a lot of different disciplines. So I like to ride on the interface between a ton of different things
Hmm.
because I'm good at knowing, "Oh, that's a gem. I'm gonna pull
Hmm.
that into my thing," or, "Ooh, I see how that random thing someone is doing can influence the work that I'm doing right now," and I think that's more like creativity. Like, I like to create things using all of the mediums that are at my disposal, and to me, I don't need to invent something, but I like to express.
Yeah.
And the way that I express is by picking up little things, like sticking it to me and then moving on. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this. Oh yeah, that." Like and then communicating that, sharing that with the world. And I actually had a question for you because I'm just like, you
Okay.
you keep doing all of these things that are like creating community around you, and they are not ostensibly part of Polyspectra, because I know what Polyspectra does. I'm like, is this part of it? Like,
Yeah.
how is this something that's part of it? And I would be like, because I could see in one hand be like, why are you doing this? Is this a good use of your time? Like, what's the point? What are the goals? And
Yeah.
then also I see that you just keep doing these types of things because you're pulled to them. Like,
It's true. Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I think for me, the uh, I've been trying to find the way to make them congruent and kind of make it all fit together. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess I would say, so Invent FM is, uh, is a part of Polyspectra. It's an experiment inside of Polyspectra. And then it's also at the same time, like, way bigger, right? And I will obviously have people on who are in 3D printing and, working in additive manufacturing. But, I think what I was, to your point, I was very drawn to this idea of, um, I sort of am an inventor and I want to create tools and resources that help other inventors. And I think that kind of, whether we call it invention or synthesis or like manifestation, whatever we call it, like that feeling of, I had this idea and then I made it real in some way. I think that's sort of my bigger mission. And it's, we say at Polyspectra, our mission is to help designers, inventors, and engineers make their ideas real. But to your point, and kind of this idea of having, I don't know, trying to like flow a little bit more is, I think one of the lessons learned with, I have this PhD to CEO kind of side thing that I was working on for a while. And for me, that was all about, a similar intention, like wanting to help people, wanting to go through this, wanting to learn about, digital marketing and all this stuff. And um, I think that um, a lot of my sort of stress about the Invent FM thing was like, oh, what bucket does it fit into? Like, is it part of this? Is it part of that? Um, and I think just saying like, well, no, like this is part of the mission. This is, all kind of one and the same. And, maybe different people have different opinions about, you know, is that the quote unquote, best use of my time? But it's certainly, uh, it's certainly relevant. I'm certainly learning a lot along the way. And I think uh, what I'm hoping is to find the way that it's, it's synergistic, with
Mm-hmm.
the bigger mission of it.
What if it doesn't have to be?
Yeah, it doesn't. You're right. I guess it could. Yeah, I like that. Could be totally different.
Yeah, I guess my it's funny because I had no concept that it was at all related to your company, like
Okay.
that they would be related. Um, yeah, so that's fascinating. Like that, yeah, because I'm just like, well, why do they need to be? You're a multidimensional human
I
who's
like
interested in
that.
all kinds of things.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I've got homework to do. Awesome. So, hey, you are a multidimensional human, and I want to make sure that we have a solid chunk of time here to talk about Daughters of Rosie. Could you tell everybody a little bit more about what you're up to there? Because it's
Mm,
really important.
my new invention.
Your new invention, your new synthesis.
Oh, yeah. So, not an invention at all. Even less so than than anything else I've done. Um, yeah, so Daughters of Rosie really was born out of, my previous company. I had a manufacturing facility for robotics. We were able to attract people who had never considered manufacturing as a career path, and we trained them and they were amazing. It was like just finding people who liked to work hard and had good mechanical aptitude and felt learned that they could be really compelling manufacturing technicians, and a lot of them were coming from the service industry and into our company. And I thought, well, why is there this big skilled labor shortage in manufacturing? Because essentially you can just hire people who've been in the service industry and teach them. They don't have to go back to school or anything like that. And then they get on these career paths that are, well, there's just so many more rungs on the ladder than if you are if you're working, as a line cook or something like that. And so I guess it just became a question in my mind of, why is the world this way? Why are there so many people over here who, completely, like, incredibly diverse pool of people, and why is manufacturing basically white and basically all men, not totally, maybe a quarter-ish percent non-men. Um, and I'm like, and these are great jobs with, like, better pay, actual benefits, things. I'm like, why
Mhm.
is this? And so when I sold that company, I was really in this period of exploration. Sold the robotics company. Period of exploration about, like, I just couldn't stop thinking about this. Why is this way? Why is the world this way? And so I started investigating it, and that's when I joined, Cyclotron Road, now Activate, as an entrepreneur in residence, was the time to explore this question and along the way help out companies that were there. Um, and you kind of break down a problem into smaller questions. And the first one was like, okay, do let's just call it women. Do women not want these jobs?
Mhm.
Okay, we ran a bunch of experiments. Answer is, actually, women really want these jobs. Once you tell them what they are and you invite them into it. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So is it that the companies don't want to hire women? And so we had conversations with so many people, VPs of HR, like, everybody's on board. They'll pay us to find the people. Um, and then so I was like, okay, wait. So the women want the jobs, the companies want to hire the women. Well, maybe it's that when women get hired, maybe they aren't successful for some reason. So, okay, we'll get a bunch of women hired and basically teach them how to get hired. So we, like, teach them how to get hired, they work, they're very successful. And so then you're left with the question of, like, okay, wait a minute. Like, all of these elements are there. Women want the jobs, companies want to hire the women. When they get hired, they're very successful, they get promoted even. So wait, why are there not why is manufacturing not 50/50? Oh, is it like, oh, there's, like, lifting requirements and all these jobs, like, actually a small number of the manufacturing, construction, transportation jobs are heavy lifting, and there's also, like, quite a few women who totally wanna do that heavy lifting, and now it's like nobody should be doing heavy lifting, just use,
Yeah.
like, buy the equipment so nobody has to, like, do back-breaking labor anymore. So, that that's still true. But what we found was there was nuances, like little nuances in it, which is that hiring managers, that's the sort of like, you've got the CEO, then the VP of HR, and then director of HR, then like the plant level HR manager, and then the hiring manager is usually like the supervisor or someone who makes the decisions about who actually gets the job. We found that it's actually really hard for those hiring managers to want to take a risk because it's sort of like their butts on the line. Like, oh,
Mhm.
if you make a bad hire, we're going to make you not hiring manager anymore. Or you make a bad hire and uh your team dynamic's going to be all off, and so we don't want to rock the boat. Um so we discovered that it's fear and bias. So, if no one has ever come along that looked like that, you're generally gonna be like, "Well, that person, how could that person be the right fit?" And I have all this pressure that if I make the wrong decision, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah.
So we're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, are we building a marketplace for, like, a diverse pool of hands-on entry-level talent?" Well, not really, because that's not actually the problem. The problem is the risk and the reluctance to make a bad hire of the hiring manager who has all the pressure on them, even if they have all the support of everyone behind, them. They don't have the tools to undergo the cultural transformation that their production team would need to go through. And so in a strange way, COVID like really, really highlighted that because it made people even more risk averse. We
Mm-hmm.
tried everything. We were like, you can hire these people for free for COVID, just, just get more people. And they're like, "Ugh, like I can't make a mistake. And like the stakes are super high. And if I hire someone who doesn't follow the protocols, like I'm not gonna hire anyone. Like, so it's fear. And so and I realized like I'm like, oh, okay. Daughters of Rosie is essentially like a business that is like kept where it is based on bias and fear. Like the Daughters of Rosie is like not succeeding right now because of bias and fear. And so decided that we're gonna work with companies who actually want to undergo a cultural transformation to become more equitable and inclusive and diverse. Um, so I've completely forgotten what your question was, but that's the entire story of how the company came to be, including through COVID and now where we are. But oh, here's the point. The point is that I just had a question that I wanted to know about the world.
Mm-hmm.
And um I figured out that there was actually a business behind it, which was this marketplace for this diverse pool of talent. Um, but that even when I built that, the demand for it was low, even though it was the thing that everyone said they wanted it. They said that this is the problem that they have. Oh, we don't have enough diversity on our team. We just need more people that we can interview. It's actually not their problem. Their problem is that like, oh, the culture of your company has so much inertia behind it to be in this one way. And it's unfair to actually put the hiring managers at the production level on the front lines of that because they've got everything pushing them in the other direction. So we're at a point now where it's like we just work with companies who want to do the
Mm-hmm.
real work of holding up a mirror to themselves and being like, oh dang, okay, we were doing that. Well,
Right.
what do we need to do to really make good on our commitments to become a more diverse and inclusive workplace?
So does that, just to clarify, does that mean now that then most of the folks that you're having these conversations with are at the C level, or?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really the whole executive teams. And there's like surprisingly few companies who've done this kind of thing successfully. Like successfully
Wow.
undergone a cultural transition. Sometimes, people do it, well, I make gains, here or there, but I'm I'm my research hat is back on. Just like cultural anthropology and research is like, how do you really do the transition? What are the hardest parts? And so our customers now are really guinea pigs for what it takes for like a tech company to make that change. And some of them are small enough that it's like, okay, can this work if you put the right ingredients in at the very beginning?
Yeah. So to that point, what would be your advice to, let's say, smaller teams, aspiring inventors, entrepreneurs, etc., to put the right ingredients in the diversity, equity, inclusion part of the formula from the beginning?
Hmm. Um, so step 1 is get practice and get comfortable talking with people who don't look like you. And that means networking, learning about what people want. Um, there's nothing special to it. Like, if your company, if your founding team is all white men, then you should reach out to Black women and be like, "Hey, you're amazing. You're in our field. I really am. I want to build my network. Is there anything that I can do to help support your career?" And just like, not like, not really like unspecific, I would say. And like go to a career fair that has a lot of like Black engineers, Latinx engineers at the career fair. Like talk to like 50 of them. Talk to 50 people who don't look like you. Like, because I think it's funny because when you watch people in those circumstances, the fear, the resistance, the like, I don't want to say the wrong thing gets in the way. And that just like means that your network will never be the network that it needs to be in order to be, you know, the leader of a diverse organization. So I would say that's like step one. And then the other thing is recognize that, and I recognize that if people have never been on a diverse team, which in tech is usually true, you've never been on a team that has voices that are all that different than yours, you don't know how incredible it is. You don't know. You don't know like how it benefits everyone. It's not just like, oh, we need more voices at the table. Like the act of getting more voices to the table and including those voices means everybody at the table is more included. Everybody at the table is invited to share. And um, so I realize that that's a barrier because, like, you know, most men, especially white men, have never experienced that kind of work environment, so they don't know how awesome it is. Um, and so I would say just trust that it is great and listen to the people that you hire when they have problems with what you do. That's the other thing is like, even I think, okay, the third thing is, you really have to get comfy with the idea that other people, like people in different demographics, are going to have a different life than you do. They're treated differently than you are. They they will have experiences that are fundamentally different, and some experiences you will never be able to understand. And that is so hard for like technical CEO people. You just won't. But what you can do is believe. You can believe this person and believe in the truth of their lived experience. And that's all you need to know. You don't need to understand it inside yourself and be like, "Oh yeah, I relate to that." Like, cuz there's there's just so many things you won't ever relate to. And you won't ever notice even. Like, you can get really good at the, you know, the basics of bias and things like that and do the work. It's definitely worth it to do the work. But also you're just gonna have to listen. You're gonna have to trust other people with zero data, you know, which is hard for founders anyway, to make decisions and trust things when they don't have like there's nothing concrete about it. It's just this person shared this thing with you and you believe them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that advice of shut up and listen. That's amazing. Hey, one question that I have, and this is something, again, this is somewhat selfish, but I think will resonate with maybe some of the folks that are on, you know, smaller teams where, you know, if you're only hiring 1, 2 people a year or something, it's kind of,
Mhm.
there's, let's say, N isn't very high for finding the right person, having statistics to even say how diverse are we.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I'm curious about is what are like non-hiring ways that, you know, companies that you've seen sort of successfully um, I don't know, foster diversity, like in their supply chain, in their customer base, I guess, you know, does that kind of make sense?
Yes, hang on, I have to plug in my computer. This is just
Uh,
about to die. Just a sec.
okay. I
Okay.
heard I heard the noise, so I think it sounds like it's background.
It's doing it. Um, yes, you said it. it's first of all, it's where you spend your money, who your contractors are, who your supply chain folks are. It's even like who makes your website, all of those things. Like you have opportunities to point money in place, like put your money in places that you normally wouldn't. And so it matters just as much as the people that you hire. And then I would say, like, just because you don't have, like, even if you don't have a diverse team, doesn't mean that your managers and people at your company aren't only going to work at your company forever. So one thing you can do is actually invest in getting them ready for either when your team grows and you want to bring on different folks. But like they're going to go on to work at other companies, and now is the time actually to focus on that stuff. Like invest in your people, make them better managers, like show them where their biases are. And then also the other thing that I was thinking is don't take inclusion for granted, even if your company culture looks pretty homogenous. There's always these other factors outside of race and gender that can cause people to feel excluded. And even apart from like sexual orientation, there's age, there's introversion, extroversion, bias. There's like all kinds of other ways that people might not be feeling included and may not be feeling like they were treated equitably. And so if you put in place the things that are, you look at your culture, you ask people how they feel, still do like a pay equity analysis, because there could be issues there. Like essentially you can put all of this stuff in place, and even if you're not hiring more than one or two people a year, make sure that when you do hire those people, you have got like the most diverse pool of candidates to choose from, and be intentional. Like if you're only making one or two hires, you can spend 6 months really just networking and getting to know everyone,
Right.
and building relationships and showing that you actually care about these things. And like, look, we're doing all these things inside of our company. We don't even have any engineers of color, but we're doing this because we believe that this is an important thing, that it's an important amount of work that we need to do for the world, and we need to get ready. And that will go a long way, because most companies don't do that. I mean, especially startups, they're like fighting whatever fires right in front of them.
Yeah.
But if you're small and if you have time, you can put the legwork in. And then that means that, your company in general will start working better together. And then when you are able to hire from a pool that's more diverse than usual, you'll actually be able to retain those folks.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I love that. Um, I love that sort of part of the essence of your answer is that there's no shortcut. It's just work, and you gotta
Yes,
put in the time and put in the effort.
that's true. There's no shortcut, but I will say that like all of the effort that you put towards it will help your entire company work better. It's not just going to benefit the marginalized groups.
Hmm. Awesome. That's amazing. Um, so we have some folks joining us live, and I want to get them ready for their opportunity to ask Danielle questions. It would be preferable if you used the question and answer box instead of the
Oh,
chat box, because it's an easier mechanism for us to sort through the millions of questions that we're going to have in the next few minutes.
I think there's 5 people besides us. Oh,
5
that's cool.
million. I think you missed a few.
Oh, great. Oh, I know half these people.
Do you? Okay. Well, you wanna call them out and make them ask you a question? Well, we could. We've never tried this. We could. Well, I don't know. We might need their consent, but we do potentially
No, I'm
have
not
the
gonna.
power to promote them to panelists and bring them on. We've never done that before, but it could be. It could be something that we do.
No, I think you should. I think you should follow your plan.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. So the plan is, if you have questions for Danielle, please load them into the Q&A, and then I'm going to ask some of my own questions as well. And so so I love that you sort of identify as an inventor. I like the synthesizer kind of role. But so let's just say let's say whether it's sort of synthesis or invention or you know deep tech entrepreneurship, etc. I'm curious, what would be your thoughts on how do we create a world with more invention?
Hmm. I think the key is creating the space to fail. Yeah, that's basically it.
So
Like
what is that, a social safety net for it? Is a badge of honor for failed entrepreneurs? What does that look like?
I mean, people talk about it a lot. They're like, fail fast, fail often. Um, but there's like a small slice of the population that can actually allocate the time resources
Mm-hmm.
to spend significant amount of time exploring something that's not going to lead to a positive outcome necessarily.
Right.
And so I do believe that we need like you need to have more widespread like economic prosperity. Like it all comes down to like disparity, right? If you want more people who can think, who can look at the world around them and just observe instead of having to be like churning through their daily stuff, like you actually need to resolve the simple things in their life so that they have more space to be creative and to solve the problems around them that they see. And people will naturally do that. They will. If you create the space for them in their lives, you create the safety that will allow them to take risks, then they will do it. Because people naturally want to help each other. And that's all like invention is. Is
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I wanted to help you do this thing. It was like hard to do this. And I want to, whatever, vaccines. Like people want to help each other. So you just have to take care of all of the like basics so that they can do that. And that can be everything from like childcare and healthcare, like spreading economic prosperity more evenly so that we can
Mm-hmm.
have a greater percentage of people who feel like they can go off on a tangent that is not the normal path to success and survival that they've been on.
Right. Yeah, and it is it's I don't know what the cognitive surplus, right, would be like one
Mm,
term for this in terms of like thinking about societal development of like, okay, you invented agriculture and now we've got some portion of people who have cognitive surplus, but it's sort of like the modern version of that, right? Which
mm,
is, if you are, always behind on rent and got to get, you have zero savings and got to get that check, you know, um, then yeah, do you have the time to allocate attention to things that um, are risky?
yeah. Yeah, totally.
I love that. Okay, we've got our first question, and a,
It's a comment.
it's a comment, but I think it's important to read it. And so, MC, loved listening to this, and thank you for acknowledging the privilege it takes to fail and risk failing. And Thanks, MC, uh, for that, and we'll acknowledge MC by reading it. Any thoughts on MC's comment?
Yeah, I think about the first, I was the first person in my family to go to college, and my parents took on a lot of debt to make that happen, and so that I could go to MIT. And I worked jobs while I was in college, but when I graduated, I was able to, I got a job at the Naval Research Lab, like doing material stuff, but I was able to essentially like hang out with my boyfriend who was still graduating from MIT. And I didn't have first of all, I didn't have an insane amount of debt because my parents had helped me with that. They took, they mortgaged their house to help me pay for college. Um and so I didn't have an insane amount of debt that meant that I had to get a job right away and start like paying huge amounts. I could work sort of a silly part-time job and hang out with my boyfriend, and that's when we made our first business. And it
Hmm.
was a small software business, but I ran that business for 13 years. And that business is what brought me enough cash to be able to go to grad school, invest in my education as a single mom. Near the end, the first part, I was not single because we were still together. But like that, it was like that, even that small slice of time where I didn't have to get a job right out of college. It was like maybe a 6-month period even where I just got to explore and I got to learn programming because my boyfriend was teaching me because we were both nerds, and like that was like a fun thing to do. And then we made this little business. It was like, oh, entrepreneurism. I got to learn how to run a business, a small business. And then that business made money. It was like a bootstrapped startup that made money, and it made enough money for a long enough period of time that I could do a PhD for 6 years. And like, yes, I was like a research assistant, but like it was that money that meant I didn't have to quit when I was single. I didn't have to quit grad school so that I could pay for childcare and like save up money. I got to stay in grad school. And I mean, it's incredible to have had just that small amount of time and a great
Yeah.
network to be entrepreneurial. And then that got me through grad school. And I was able to I was able to have a completely different path in life because of that. And yeah, a lot of people do not have that luxury. It all came
Yeah.
down to money, really. And I didn't
Right.
have money, and I didn't have, a family to take care of yet. I didn't have, like, ailing grandparents or parents that I needed to take care of, like,
Yeah.
I didn't have a child yet, like, there were all these things that are constraints that get put on people, and but especially the, like, "I've gotta get a high-paying job because college is so expensive,"
Mhm.
that was that was an amount of privilege that I had that was really valuable to me.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, speaking of people who spent all of their money paying for my education, Catherine has a question. My mom, hey mom.
Aw.
Catherine's question for you is wondering if you could comment on how you see elementary high school education becoming better able to support the creative process that is necessary for creativity and invention in whatever field.
Oh, just, what should education be? No biggie, just like the most important
You
question.
can do it.
So I'd say we have to step back and think about what's the role. What is the role that we that that education is providing, elementary and high school through high school education? Because if it's keeping kids out of trouble, that's one thing. If it's providing stability when kids don't have it at home, or if it's to, if it's just, childcare in general, or is it to create millions of people that are able to slot into the like capitalistic structure and just follow orders? Is that the goal? Or is the goal to create, and this is what I think the goal should be, to create emotionally intelligent beings who know who they are and what they want, and they have resources that allow them to explore that life, because that's what I think education should be, and I don't think that it is right now. And um so what could we do to become more like that? Is like, well, I think there's a shift from, we want to create people who are like roughly able to just be people who operate our capitalistic structure, in whatever ways, and they sort of don't know what they want, so that they will just do whatever everybody else wants them to do. um, I think that's like mostly what we're good at creating with school right now. People get out of
Mm.
high school, they don't know they don't know what they're really interested in, because they've been doing everything that everyone else wants on everybody else's schedule in the format that everybody else wants them to do. And so I would just step back and think about like, what is it that we want to achieve, and how can we do that? How can we, because I mean, a classroom of 30 children is like 30 complete human beings that are finding their way in the world. Like, how do we
Mm.
create the structure that supports those people finding their way in the world safely with
Yeah.
love?
Yeah, I love that. And I actually want to bring that uh, back to the very beginning of our conversation around um, it being okay to fail, and like, having being able to mourn the loss of something that didn't work out. But I think one of the privileges that I had in elementary school, high school, in terms of science education was, most of that curriculum is like, memorize these things and then feed them back to me. And I think I had the privilege of, my dad is a scientist, and I had the privilege of knowing that that's not actually what scientists do. If you could look up the answer in a textbook, that's not science anymore, right? And
Yeah.
that what scientists really do is ask questions and try to figure out the answer. And this, you have to um, have the ability to fail. You have to have the ability to be lost. You have to have the ability to be curious. And
Mhm.
memorizing lists and writing them back on the standardized tests is really it's important skill in terms of skill building, but uh, why do we only teach that? And we very rarely teach, solving problems for yourself. And I think now with the internet, it's even harder to do that, because there it's so easy to Google for the answer. That how do you encourage children and young adults to find questions for themselves that they care about and that
Mm.
they can figure out on their own.
Yeah. I mean, the process of a human being figuring out who they are, learning how to communicate how they feel, is a messy process. It's gonna be like, it's like drawing, it's like trying to follow a butterfly. Like, it's just gonna be all over the place. It's not gonna be tidy. There's gonna be a lot of weird stuff that happens, and
Yeah.
that you can't predict. And I think that that's like, I think that having both is really important. Like, I like the discipline part of school. There's some good parts of it where it's like, um it's like good habits and things like that. Like, that's totally fine, but that's such a small portion and of like what the process is for a person. And I think honestly, like, You could probably learn that in like a couple hours a day at school. Like, oh, this is like what it means to be in a social structure and all of this stuff. But it would be nice if parents had more bandwidth to be able to spend that time with their kids, like that messy exploratory time, um, as well. And it, just comes down to who has the resources to do that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I have a few more questions. I want to be respectful of your time today, but I have a couple more questions before we wrap up. And so one of them is, um, my goal with this show is to highlight awesome people making it real in their, in their own way. And I'm so grateful that you chose to join us, and took the time out of your day to be here. I had who are folks that are doing important things, inventors, synthesizers, connectors, however you want to call it, that I should invite on the show.
Hmm. Well, I always have like a short list of people um that I recommend for things. I guess and usually it's all like engineers and designers and founders of color. I would say um I just want to email you a list of people,
Okay,
but I would say like
that's
now
fine.
my world is expanding, and there are like the founders and engineers and scientists, that category, but there's also the folks who are working on equity and inclusion and diversity, and like leaders in that area who are synthesizing in real time, because there's no roadmap. There's like no roadmap whatsoever. You get into a company and you're like trying to help them do a cultural transformation of some sort, or like helping them create policies, and it's murky, because you're also like, oh, well, we've been doing this way forever. And then the person's like, well, actually, if this, these other three goals are your goals, then maybe we should change it in this following way. And so every day it's like a synthesis and it's like problem solving to try to get a company that's been used to doing something in one way to do it in a new way. And the
Yeah.
methods that these folks use to get that to happen is really awesome. So I would love to recommend to, they're like cultural inventors. um
That's amazing. Okay, well, we
yeah.
will we'll take it offline. I'll take it by email, and I really appreciate
Yeah.
that. I guess any asks of either the live audience or the millions of viewers to come for the replay.
um Asks. Okay. um the sort of global ask is to just do the work, explore what it means to be a human being that's riddled with bias. Like, that's my global ask. My industry ask is to speak up inside whatever organization you're in, and make sure that people care about including everyone and becoming more equitable, treating people equitably. And if they don't want to do that, quit and we'll find you another job. And then the thing which is an ask for me personally is, if you come across a company that you think is ready to walk the walk and do the hard work of cultural transformation when it comes to equity and inclusion and diversity, let me know. Connect me with them, because I can only take on so many clients per year, and I want to know who the best ones are, because I like to win. And so
That's
I like to work with whoever's best. Yeah.
We learned earlier that you don't like taking no for an answer, so we want to feed you leads that are ready to go. So
That's
Danielle,
right.
where can people reach out to you with those ideas?
Yes. So LinkedIn is the best place. I am just a compulsive LinkedIn user. I think it's my name is like slash Danielle Applestone is my LinkedIn profile. And then yeah, daughtersofrosie.com is we're in a transition because COVID changed our business model, but yeah, that's also a way to find out more about what we're doing.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, everybody reach out to Danielle with your ideas. And I think with that, we will wrap things up and say thank you so much for your time and joining us here today. It was really fun.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been great.
All right. Take care. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.